All right. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, I'm Brother Brian. I'm here again each and every week with Brother Marcus here at the Community Roundtable as we do it because together we are the voice of the community here on KIEZ 106.7 FM. Hey, Brother Marcus. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm great. Happy to be here, sitting at the round table. Life is what it is.
Yeah, you're a patient man. I messed around, didn't make it on time, but hey, messed around, turned the video on. You was there and ready, bro. What you do? Sleep all night long, just ready to get the information out?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is important. This is really important that people understand and hear the sound of our voice and the information that we reveal. It's powerful stuff. It's news you can use. So yeah, I'm always ready. I'm gun ho. I'm excited to be here. Like I said, each and every time we sitting at the table, I'm excited. You know.
Exactly, exactly. Well, tell the family what we do when we sit down at the round table and we sit down and we EAT.
EAT for us is an acronym which means evaluate all things. And I'm gonna say that again for those who may have didn't hear it. EAT for us is an acronym which means evaluate all things. That's what we do here at the round table. Evaluate all things.
And that's what we have to do. We have to do it together, never separate. And that's why we are the voice of the community. Well, Brother Marcus, we're going to talk about a few topics this week so we can break everything down to the table. At the table to the family. And so we could digest it just right, properly, and not choke on it. Brother Marcus, in the town of Monroe, we had a situation where there was some alleged police brutality. And there have been some very peaceful protests going on. They were requesting the video cam of an individual that looks like you and I, lives in our community, that he was claiming to be abused. But for a short period of time, the video had never got released. And so with that, the video was finally released, and I think I sent you a copy of it. Did you get a chance to check it out?
Oh yeah, I checked it out. I mean, I checked it out.
And does that surprise you? That's
no,
going on in the city of Monroe?
No, it don't surprise me because these kind of situations have happened before in the city of Monroe. The city council members say our great city of Monroe is being affected by police brutality or police violence. But this has been happening. This has happened before. Man got gunned down, having a chain in his hand. Shot in the middle of the streets, right in front of his family. Mental illness on his behalf. But the police didn't look at it from that perspective, and they ultimately gunned him down. So, this done happen on a numerous occasions in the city of Monroe. So, I mean, hey, you got to look at it for what it is. I looked at the video. I couldn't see them actually beating on him or whatever, but I hear him hollering,
Now, I did notice on the video where when the young man was on the ground on his stomach and handcuffed behind his back, the one officer had maybe some type of weapon, a taser or a gun pointed at him. The next thing you know, another officer come running towards the young man's head, and he kicked him.
Yeah.
And I did see that.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that part, but I'm gonna go back and look at it again. But I also seen the guy putting real pressure on his neck.
I did see that. I didn't know if it was on his neck or his back.
Yeah, scrubbing his face to the ground. And you can hear him holler. He said, "I ain't that guy. I ain't the one." So I mean, it's some injustice there, no doubt. And I'm glad the camera caught it, because if without the camera, they would just say, "Oh, this man, he's lying."
So a man's word is not good enough.
Oh, never. Not in the court of law, and especially us being who we are. Rodney King's situation really set this thing off, and that happened in 1992. The beating of police. Rodney King was supposedly been on drugs at the time and trying to evade the police, but when they captured him, they try to beat him to death almost. 7 to 8 officers on top of him, beating him with batons, hitting him in the face. The same situation with this situation right here. It's 3 or 4 guys on top of this one particular individual. He already laying down, and he got his hands behind his back, but they still doing some aggressive stuff. Too much aggression right there. That's injustice in itself. Okay, you got the man arrested, put him in the car, take him to jail. But we don't get our just due. It's not justice for us. It's just us. They always doing us this way. Doing us a disservice when it comes to criminal activity police brutality, we get the burden of the stick real fast, you know. So they scared of us for real.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this thing that's called brutality. We hear it all the time about police brutality, but brutality from the local government that's supposed to serve us, but brutality in a different name, something that's called systemic bias. So allow us to break that down. But yeah, we definitely have to talk about the brutality in the criminal justice system, and we're seeing one phase of it in law enforcement. Individuals that are abusing their power, that abuse their authority. So this man was subdued. He was no harm to anyone. So now to come running at full speed and kick this individual in the head, I don't know what happened, if he broke a nose or tooth, but it was uncalled for. So we want to talk about brutality in a different name, systemic bias. Now that individual was arrested, he bonded out, and now he's going to have his day in court, dealing with the criminal justice system. In the criminal justice system, as a whole, there are some systemic biases there. So we as a community, we must stay focused and not allow someone to paint this narrative that injustice is only done in the form of police brutality. Because I'm looking at it that they're attempting to persuade us to focus on one aspect of it. So we're going to try to break it down like we just talked about before the show, brutality in a different name, or brutality in its original form, which is systemic biases. We want to break it down to criminal justice, voting, education, economic development, economic security. We want to break this thing down, actual what brutality is, and not only focus on police brutality, because now they have us focusing on this police brutality, and at that we don't really think outside the box. The only thing I'm hearing in the community is about defund the police. So let's break this down about brutality that comes from police officers, law enforcement. Now, Brother Marcus, I know that you and I, we did some business together, and some of the businesses that we were in, take like the MVI, motor vehicle inspection, we had to have a bond. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
I'm in the bail bond business. I have to have insurance bonds. Attorneys, elected officials, medical officials, they have to have what this thing that's called bonds. But for some reason, a police officer doesn't have to have a bond to be held accountable. Now, you're currently in the construction industry. And if you all get a contract or you build a home, you have to have insurance and bonding, or your subcontractors have to have insurance and bonding. So where's the equality in that when this government official that carries a weapon that has all this express and implied authority does not individually have to carry a bond and be individually held accountable for their actions? That's why we need to think outside the box and do not allow individuals to paint this narrative on us, because what happens is that if there is this thing called, not if, but when this thing called police brutality takes place, now a person goes to court, they win in court, and now that city, that city has to pay that lawsuit. And the money comes from about a couple of different places. One, it comes from insurance that the city has, whether it's self-insured or they have a commercial insurance company. And two, take like a city size of Monroe. If we were sued as a city, now our insurance will pay a portion, maybe about a 10 or 20% of that lawsuit for punitive damages, but now the city has to take out a bond. So what that means is that the city as a whole has to, you and I, taxpayers, citizens, we have to pay for this individual's misconduct. And so now people are getting richer on this thing called police brutality bonds. We have major issues here in our community, but we're not focused on the true brutality that's taking place in our community.
Yeah, because it should come directly from the individual who caused the crime or who caused the activity, you know, instead of the city paying for itself, because we become the pays, you know, the people who own businesses, the people who own homes, those dollars that we pay in as taxes go toward the the
Settlement.
lawsuit or the severance if he wins in that particular case, which shouldn't happen at all. That's why we got to look at these systems. You said systematic bias. We got to look at these systems, break them down, and change them to the fact and to the point where they be beneficial for the people and by the people, not just look at the system and say, oh, it's bias in this system. Nah, you got to understand what the system is and how it works. You know, they said defund the police. If you defund the police, now you have nobody to protect you in any situation that happens in the city. You know, so we don't just defund the police. We find a real solution to the problem. The problem is these guys need to be actually reorientated to deal with people in a civil society. You know. Because, I mean, that's police brutality because they don't know how to deal with each other. The conversation, oh, no, you guilty. We guilty before proven innocent. It is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
We are already guilty, especially being black in America. Oh, yeah, you did it. You know, you whistled at that white woman, so I'm going to knock your head off. You know, nah, that ain't how this situation is supposed to work. Emmett Till situation. So these things still occurring about the police. How do you police the police? That's the system need to be put in place for certain things. But then you talk about the judiciary system. We make up 13% of the population and make up 65 to 70% of the prison population. That don't make any sense. That's systematic bias right there. How do we make up 13% of the population in America and make up 60 to 65% of the prison population in America? That's slavery all over again. Involuntary servitude. You know, they put us right back in. They let us go and put us right back in it through criminal activity. So situations calls for criminal activity. If I don't have nothing, I feel like I need it. I'm gonna go out and rob something. Who taught us that criminal activity? You see what I'm saying? And then they make us become convicted felons on top of that situation. Now you don't have no fair housing. You can't receive affordable housing or HUD housing if you're a convicted felon. And if we make up 60 to 65% of being convicted felons, now we're not able to go and apply for subsidized housing to be able to fall into the. Now those are systems that has the bias in them. You see what I'm saying? I done been convicted of a crime. I did the time for the crime. Then I come out, can't go to a higher educational institution for us, college, because you have a criminal history. You know, if you convicted of a violent crime, you can't go rape. You know, in these different institutions, it's the bias system that's in place that prevents the guy or the woman from going to the next level, obtaining higher education to be able to provide for themselves. So that's the bias. That's the thing that need to be fixed.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. We're talking about the true brutality that's taking place in our communities dealing with criminal justice. So going back to what we actually saw, what was taking place, police brutality, young man that was subdued, wasn't a harm to anyone, and still was under the attack of being excessively abused due to abuse of power. So now this young man has to go to court, and now in court, because we're focusing on systemic biases. Now, most of our individuals, as you say, they go to court. I think one time you said that you went to court just because I know you do a lot of research. You just went to the court just to observe. And when you went in there, over 90% people in court looked like us.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a major challenge right there. But even further than that, you've said before, you know, I learned so much from you. You said before that how did you put it? Most people in jail that's doing time, state or local, they're undereducated or functionally illiterate.
Oh, yeah.
So now I have a degree, working on my master's degree, but I know several times I've been to court to observe. Things are moving so fast. I mean, extremely fast. It is tough for you to receive it, comprehend it. So imagine someone that's functionally illiterate, that's not able to maneuver in that system. They become overwhelmed with it.
Oh, yeah. They overwhelmed, and plus they want to get out of the incarceration. So they plead guilty to the charge, even if they're not guilty, you know, because, I mean, the system is set up to say, oh, yeah, again, I said we guilty until proven innocent. You don't have a lawyer, somebody to speak on your behalf. They give you an independent lawyer that he's overworked, underpaid, so he's gonna come in, look at your case. One time he see you the first day in court, he never looked at your case. Y'all never sit down and talked about the issue, what happened. So he's saying, okay, they offering you a plea. What
He
you
or
want to
she.
do? Yeah, they offer you, it's your first time meeting me. You say, oh, they offer you a plea. What you want to do? What the plea? 2 years, and you go home in 6 months. But now you become a convicted felon. You don't even know the recourse of that. So you say, all right, I ain't even done it. I haven't even did the crime for real. I was with somebody who stole something, you know? But dang, I'm in the car, so everybody's in charge with the situation. So these are things that need to change. You know, these people that represent you don't really represent you because they underpaid and overworked, you know? So again, when you talk about people sitting in the courtroom, you're talking about a courtroom of 200 people, and 185 of them are black individuals in the courtroom. I said, what? Because we don't go sit in the courthouse, you know, to see what's going on, because we're not a part of the system in its entirety, except for being criminals, paraded as criminals in the justice system. It's injustice, bias towards us all around the country, man. Not just in Monroe, Louisiana, but all around the country, in all 50 states. This is happening. This is happening.
Yeah, so we're talking about the systemic biases that take place in the criminal justice system from government employees. Now, we're still talking about government employees. We talked about the criminal justice system from being arrested by the police. Now we're talking about being arrested by and being held by a local facility. Now we're talking about going to actual court and having a representation of a court-appointed attorney. And now we're looking at what actually takes place in the courthouse. If a person just pleads guilty and receives that F on his or her forehead, now we're at the stage of voting. Now, because the individual has an F on their forehead, now they are excluded from the authority to vote. And when a person has the authority or the right to vote, now they're making a difference for their children and their children's children. They become part of this system that actually can create a pattern that people can maneuver in this thing called justice system. But if you've been excluded, that's just like circulating a dollar in the community. If you choose not to be part of that, or you cannot play in that recirculation, then not only does that individual become a victim, their children's children become a victim, and then only a few can make the difference through voting. So we have to actually become aware of what's taking place and how something as small as a opportunity of whatever, a crime or an opportunity to attempt to come up due to the miseducation of our community. Now we connecting all the dots, how we can actually become brutalized through this thing called systemic biases.
Oh yeah. See, what we got to really realize that every sector of society is a piece of the system. You see, it's a puzzle. Higher education, criminal justice system, fair housing. All of these things been designed by the people who say they represent us, the United States government of America. You know, we got congressmen in each city and state that and state representatives that represent us as a people in the 50 cities, 50 states, towns, and villages. All of these people represent us, and they supposed to put the puzzle together. You know, how do you call on someone to stop inequality in each city for blacks in America? You know, how do you the federal government is being called on, the Federal Reserve is being called on to stop inequality in the overall government system.
And I don't think they can do that. They don't have that option.
They can't do it. The systematic systems that are already in place by the Congressional Congress can do that. Education. You know, at one time we weren't allowed to go to schools, to to colleges, right? So that's why we started our own historical black colleges. You see, we weren't allowed to go to public school. You see, that's why we started our own. You understand? So now these systems has been integrated, and now there's no equality in them. So they got when you go to Congress, you a Congress member, you appointed to different branches of the government that you put your knowledge and your understanding to enact different bills to be able to cover certain things in the government.
Right.
You know, they put out funding. See, who controls the wealth control everything. So that's why they put out, they say, okay, the Federal Reserve need to put a stop to the inequalities in society, because they control the money. You see, they control the money. They over all the banks that's inside of America. They have a central bank. They put out securities and the things that need to be the bonds that we talk about, the insurance securities that's over all the different aspects of business, or doing business, or that's involved in each community. You see, but we don't know how the puzzle is put together. We just, it's about, defund the police. No, we got to set up a new paradigm, a new system to be able to re-educate the police on how to deal with the people in society, how to deal with the judiciary inequalities in the prison system. How do we make up 13% of the population and make up 60 to 65% of the prison population?
Well, let's talk about that right now. Because you're throwing so many gems out there, and I want to definitely be able to follow you and connect all these dots. So we were talking about policing, abuse, how all the dots are connected to injustice. Now the person's in court, functionally illiterate. They're nervous. They want to get out of that situation. They just cop out or plea to that felony. Now the felony is on their forehead. Now they're at the stage of unable to vote, and it limits their opportunities from education, because they can't qualify for housing, Pell Grants, things like that. So now they accept a low-paying job. Also in the state of Louisiana, if you have an F on your forehead or a felony, it disqualifies you from over 400 different licenses. And so if it disqualifies you for all these different licenses, you become so subpar or so limited to how you can actually earn a living and provide for yourself and your family. And what ends up happening, you do what you know how to do to eat.
You revert to criminal activity, robbing a bank, selling drugs, because you're not able to get into the system because of the felony. You know, you can't be a licensed Class A contractor if you had a criminal activity in the last 5 years. If you've been a convicted felon just 4 years ago, and then you trying to get your construction, your Class A license to build houses, you can't.
General contractor?
Contractor's license, you can't do it, because the system has that system in place about the convicted felon. And then sometimes, like,
hey, one thing as you touch on that, and hopefully you don't mind sharing with us, because we all are aware of your past history, and you came out rocking and rolling, ready to roll and maneuvering in society. And I know at one time you made a decision to go ahead and get your real estate license, and you just couldn't apply locally. You had to travel 3, 4, 5 hours and talk to a board, and not beg, but get their approval, and had to take you through hurdles.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, I applied. I was talking about getting the same guy that I'm working for now was telling me that I needed to go to real estate school, because his realtor was getting 3% of the of every transaction that he does
on the sale.
He sells the house. So I inquired about it.
You're a numbers man. You don't believe in computers.
Real estate school.
You pick up that ink pen.
Yeah, everybody was telling me, "Oh man, you're a convicted felon. You can't go to real estate school." So I looked into it, and actually, it was kind of true, but not true. So They said you had to go before the board and tell your story. It was 11-panel board.
Whoa.
You know, we had to go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and sit before 11 people. Guess what? All of those individuals that I sit before was white individuals that had been appointed the seat to be over the real estate administration in the city of, in the state of Louisiana. And you go sit and tell your story. Now, you know, they have the latitude to say yay or nay if you can actually go further in receiving your real estate license to be a realtor in the state. And I told my story, and they say, well, man, you've been out over 15 years now. You in the community. Now, at that time, I was out about 10 years. I had been free for 10 years. You hadn't did any new criminal activity. So, yeah, we'll allow you to further your education and get a real estate license. So I said, wow. On my way back, I was thinking, I said, man, you know, at a young age, I didn't think about that situation being before some board talking about obtaining a license. You said a felony disqualified you for over 400 different licenses. This is a piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. This will take you to the next level, being qualified, certified to do a certain job in the United States of America. And it's a part of a system. All this stuff has been laid down from generation to generation. You know, our state institutional government was solidified in what, 1797 or 1789. Then they just kept building and building, and all the different components of society is built on our constitutional right. You know, but if you were a convicted felon, you were a slave, and you don't have any rights. You know, so I'm looking at when I decided to go to real estate school, then I was at the latter stage of obtaining my license, and I diverted and came and got another aspect of it, which is the actual building process. I said, wow, I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna be my own real estate realtor. I'm gonna build for sale by owner, you know, and have my real estate license to do so. You see what I'm saying? So all these components connect. You know, not only did I do that, I said, well, it's 4 components in building a house. I'm gonna go to school for HVAC, heating and air conditioning. You see, so I can have a upper leg on that. Then when I decided to go to the institution, which is the college Votech for, they said, oh, you a convicted felon? Yeah. Oh man. Now that's another hurdle, because a convicted felon had to, you know, they saying, okay, well, we're gonna allow you to come in. We ain't gonna promise you that you're gonna get no job though after you graduate.
Let's break that down, because I'm having some challenges here. Well, we have to go and ask permission in order to provide for our family because of this thing that's called a license. And it's just like the voting rights bill. We have to ask for permission in order to vote. Now, due to the 13th Amendment, now you get that F on your forehead. Now we have to ask to get specific licenses that can actually change our family's economic condition. And I have some challenges with that, because in my mind, I believe in my heart, if a crime was committed, you play it out, you do your time, and at that point, I believe things should be done and over with. But it's not. You're doing the actual time, plus now you're being held back from other opportunities many years later. This is the same old Jim Crow laws that's currently in place, that it is tough for us to break from that bondage.
That's why we the number one persons or people incarcerated, because it's a slave factor. They're saying, okay, we've been keeping them down for 400 years. We're gonna keep them down for another 400. Let our generation keep getting up. You see what I'm saying? So if I'm a convicted felon, then I'm not able to provide for my family. Then my son becomes a convicted felon. He's not able to provide for his family. It's a generational curse in a sense, because your children, his children, and his children go and become criminals in an unjust system, because necessity made you create opportunity for yourself. I started selling drugs at a young age, 16, 15 years old, because I saw an opportunity to make some money real fast, you know. But I mean, it wasn't. It was forced upon me, but it wasn't forced upon me. My situation caused a desperate situation caused you to do desperate things. You know, you seeing your mother not having anything, or she working all day, but she not able to make adequate means fit the situation. You saying, wow. So the drug thing came into play, and the government introduced it, and a lot of the young black guys got involved. So, okay, yeah, become drug dealers. That's why they still be trying to become drug dealers to this day, because they see there's a lot of money involved in it, but it actually can harm you if you become a convicted felon in the situation. Same thing now. They even took the drug game and made it illegal. They selling weed. The government is selling weed. You see what I'm saying? And you got brothers languishing in prison that used to sell weed. They got life sentences and 30 years and 20 years. Then when they come out, they don't have no opportunity. They don't have no opportunity. Where you going? You've been gone for 20 years. Where are you going to get a job at? What kind of skills do you have?
Selling, I don't have any. They can sell drugs. They know how to grow it. They know how to sell it. But because now they have that F, they are disqualified from getting that license.
Systemic biases on all levels of society. See, we got the opportunity to reverse it, though. We got the opportunity to reverse it. We get involved and say, hey, this doesn't work anymore. The war on drugs is dead. You got millions of people that came through the channels of prison that would never be able to move forward with their lives because of the convicted felon. They won't never be able to move forward. They are on parole, on probation. They paying fines and fees. The government is getting rich off this. I was looking into the Federal Reserve, right? I told you he who controls wealth control everything. They generated $102 billion profit in the year 2015. And all they do is send the money right back to different channels of the government. That's why they say, hey, we don't have the opportunity to create equality. The Congress does, because when you fund the money, you give the people a share of the wealth. They won't have to commit crime. You house me in prison and pay the prison facility $33,000 a year to house me there. You could give me that same $33,000 a year and I won't create any crime in the society. You know why? Because here I am in society working for McDonald's at $7.25 an hour, right? $12,000 a year. I'm living off $12,000 a year as a McDonald's employee, making $7.25. If you gave me $33,000 a year, I wouldn't even commit any crime because I have enough money to be able to actually live.
So you're talking about alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenders. That there are alternative ways if we think outside the box.
Yeah, because the actual drug dealer doesn't even make any money off the drug. The high chain does. The man who distributed it to him makes the money. He sometimes makes some money who we distribute to, but that ain't a real, actual, effective channel because there's criminal aspects in there that's gonna cause some grave danger.
Yeah, let's connect those dots too. Now we're talking about that opportunity. Some men think that's an opportunity, and now everyone that illegally commits a crime, they will get caught. They will go to jail, and that starts that entire cycle all over again.
Oh yeah.
And as we get into that cycle, I want to talk about. We talked about the person with the F on their forehead, unable to get a decent living wage job. But let's go back to when they are actually incarcerated. Now we are out here as free people fighting for it to getting living wage jobs, but corporations now are going into the compound. Is that right? Creating businesses. And now on the free world, you may be eligible to make $25, $35 an hour. But when the corporations put this business or this organization on the compound, what are the living wages then?
Yeah, the federal government The federal government, on the federal side, that's who makes the money. They got 117 institutions. Hear me now, 117 institutions and untold numbers of bodies, 60 to 70,000 people in these prisons, or hundreds of thousands in these prisons that don't pass through. Millions don't pass through, but 60 to 70,000 are in these 117 prisons, right? So they got something called a Unicor factories in each institution. They make something that's provided to the government. And those individuals get paid $1.13, 13 cents. It depends. That's what it depends on. It depends on your level of education. If you don't have a GED, high school diploma, or institution that know how to type, your job is minimal. You're going to have a minimal job that pays you 13, 12, 14 cents. You're talking about people living off $14 a month getting paid. The guy I worked for, he was in the institution with me. He was making $14 a month due to his educational level, and he increased his educational level, got his high school diploma like I did. Now my pay grade level goes up. His pay grade level went up, making $1 and something a day, $1 and something an hour, and you go to work for 8 hours a day. They got a whole system just like in the free world. But they don't get paid much money. But the government is making millions of dollars off this. We don't understand it because we're not understanding the systemic bias in society that connects all the pieces. And this stuff is built on how our United States congressmen and congresswomen represent us as a people. This stuff is for the people, by the people, but the people have really no real just due because they don't understand the systems in which they live in.
Let's break that down. What you just mentioned, how these jobs, these corporations come on the compound, they open up, hire these individuals that have the F on their forehead, and they make $1.50 an hour. So they get all this on-the-job training, this education, stay in the system for over 10 years working, making $1 some per hour. Now they get released. They've done their time. And now they go and apply to a similar corporation. They have all the training, have years of experience, but now they can't get hired.
Yeah, Unicor don't show up in America. In society, the Unicor job you had in prison don't show up. They saying you've been out of work for 10 years. I came home and applied for every job I can apply for. That's what the people kept telling me. Hey man, where you been for the last 10 years? You've been out of circulation. You don't have any job history. Come on, man. You see, this system isn't working. So we got to stop it. We got to stop the pipeline, the prisons type stuff. As a juvenile, see, I started as a juvenile delinquent, not listening to my mother, going out, hanging out with my peers. These people already know 4 out of 5 guys hanging on the corner, 3 of them going to jail at some point in time in their life. So they got that numbers. They statistically got these numbers laid down and saying, okay, this is what's gonna happen. They can determine what's gonna happen years down the line.
Yeah, forecasting.
But we have to look at it and say, okay, we got to stop this by being educated to the point where I tell my son, hey, don't do that. This is gonna cause you this, this, and that. But they can't hear it because they can't see it. There's so many distractions in the world. There's so many distractions. They can't hear that. They can't hear that you don't did it all and seen it all. They can't hear you and I done did that before. I can see him coming. All the new chains on, whatever. The guy got the new Rolex. Where you get a Rolex from? How did you put all the money back into the economy the wrong way. You taking out from selling drugs and you put it right back into the hands of the wealthy again. You go buy a new car, some shoes and all that. Then when you get ready to go to prison, you don't have anything when you come out. Don't make any sense. It's because of the distraction. We can't see or hear the information that in which we receive. We're not digesting this information. Somebody's giving us misinformation and we using it and running off with it like it's a gold mine. It's not. It's not. So when we talk about these issues, that's why I say this is news that you actually can use. You got to sit down and digest the information. What happened? How did it happen? How can I fix it? It needs to be some solutions. Listen, the CARES Act, that was the coronavirus relief economic stimulus package thing, right? They had already had this design to be able to get the money out. They gave about $2.2 trillion. Majority of it they gave to big corporations and small businesses that didn't know how to utilize the money. Now they got to give it right back to the Federal Reserve Bank, the government. They got to pay it back. How they going to pay it back if they scared to go out and go to work? The coronavirus scared them, and the numbers they keep on saying the numbers going up, so now people ain't afraid to go to work. And now they don't give them, now they're not going to give them any income to support for the next 6 or 7 months because they say they gave all of it out. You know, so what you going to do in the next 6, 7 months to a year? Because we don't understand the system. They giving the money to the wrong entities. How you get the money to the big corporations and they supposed to give it to their employees and then they laying off everybody? They saying, hold up, we closing our stores, you know, we closing the restaurants, we closing this, we closing that. Now unemployment at 30 to 40 million people. And they asking for the Federal Reserve to fix it. Now the government has to fix it. You see what I'm saying? The system, all the pieces of the puzzle is one big picture. It's one big picture.
Well, it's like what we say, EAT, each and every time. We must evaluate all things. And now we're talking about connecting the dots. And the dots down here in the South, one of the most popular games is called domino. So you start out with a big number, big 6 to start the game. And now you're trying to connect those dots. Now, in the event, if it's your play and you cannot connect the dots properly, either you're going to cheat the systems or some kind of way, or you're going to knock and bypass you. And that's what's been happening in our community. We're sometimes we may try to improvise and get beyond the system, but we end up getting bypassed and other people end up winning because they sat down and they evaluated all things on how to connect the dots. And that's what we're talking about. Let's get together, evaluate all things, and not get caught up in that specific system of, well, I guess the system is there. We have to evaluate it. And now we got to some kind of way break down that system and create a better system that actually works for the embodiment of all individuals and not just a specific class.
And you know what we got to do? We got to study the Federal Reserve banking system. Once we study the Federal Reserve banking system, right? Federal Reserve Bank, it's the central bank for all the banks in America, right? Right? So they disperse cash flow to go to the government. The Federal Reserve Bank of the central bank is the government's bank and they're the banker's bank. So when they disperse the money to the federal government to go to highway spending, public education, fair housing, the prison systems. You see what I'm saying? We take those, we evaluate how they put the money into those particular entities and say, okay, we don't need no money for the prison industry as much as we allotting to them because we're trying to bring down the prison population.
But the Federal Reserve what do? They just allocate the funds, but the funds are approved by the Congress, right?
Right, and they send it to they disperse it to different entities that they control. So when then they got 12 branches. They got the Federal Reserve got 12 branches, 12 branches that they look at the banking systems, how they doing business. They set the interest rates. They try to control the maximum unemployment. You know. They control all these different things. They control 3 different things in society: setting the interest rate, unemployment. Maximizing employment in a society, all 50 states, towns and villages, and controlling the interest rate, how it's done, right? So when they disperse and guess how many of us in the Federal Reserve in the government body? One. So we got to look at how the systems are done, systemic biases in the system, and create new systems. We've been talking about this for a long time, but we got to study each industry, education, you know, uh, how the Fair Housing Act been in place for over 52 years. We still saying we don't have fair housing. Who building the housing? You know, why the government would give a certain general contractor $50 million to build a certain to go in and carve out some land and put sewage roads and drainage in this area, and then gate it in and allow a certain class of people to go in it, red line. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
The government provided the money. They provided the money for public housing and all of these different things. You see, we have to just study them, break them down, and fix them, because they can be fixed. They can be fixed, but they got to include everybody. You dig what I'm saying? And we always talk about black and white, but it's Latinos here in America. Everything is in black and white. Why? Because it started in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
You dig what I'm saying? On paper. It started on paper. They put this stuff on paper. Then they look at the letter of the law. Our Constitution is the letter of the law. You know what I mean? The judiciary aspect of this thing. You know, we talk about the injustice in the justice system. You know, they had a judge selling young black boys to juvenile facilities. Selling them. They gave him 23 years, right? The coronavirus came, they let him go. They let him go. Put an ankle bracelet on him and sent him home.
Yeah.
He was a judge. That's injustice. That's injustice in the justice system. It's just us. They make criminals out of. In Louisiana, right? When Governor, what the guy named? The Indian guy was the governor.
Jindal,
Bobby Jindal. We got 11 state institutional owned prisons that's state owned, and we got a host of satellite prisons, right? He was about to sell 2 of the state facilities, and he said, hey, we're gonna sell the institution to
CCA.
CCA. They changed their name. Brian, to hide under the cover of darkness. But we're gonna sell the institution to CCA. But you got to promise us that you will be able to provide 95% capacity. How do you promise that? You make criminals. Who do you make criminals? Young black boys. You see what I'm saying? So that's the system that we have to change. How do you keep destroying us? Lack of education, not knowing. Then you go in the court system and you don't understand what he just mentioned to you. You got the right to remain silent. You studied talking. He said you had the right to remain silent. You studied talking. You can't hear because you studied over talking the judge. Then you get in the court system and you only see 2 black judges in the whole system of 13. 13 judges in the judiciary facilities in the Washington Parish or whatever the number is, and then you got 2 of them that's black. That don't make any sense.
I think I'm more than 2.
I'm just saying. Okay. I'm just giving you a demonstration of the number. Mm-hmm. You know, we make up very little. We make up very little judges in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah,
you know, and in the city. You know, so it don't equate. But we make up 60 to 75% of the population. How are all the judges are white? How are all the judges are white? But again, we not understanding the system that's in place. They are in place for a reason. So we have to figure out how to change them while we working in the process. You know, we got to talk to our people straight. But they can't really hear. So we got to do some tangible stuff to make them understand that this is for them.
Exactly right. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about connecting the dots. We're talking about sitting at the round table and evaluating all things and truly understanding from afar as we sit down and evaluate it, how the entire system was actually created and how it's currently being developed. Because if we get caught up in that system, now we become disenfranchised from many basic necessities of life: voting, homes, living wage jobs, careers, specific licenses, education, economic equality. And so we got some challenges here. But we, as you said, brother, we got to go back to the basics and understand what took place years ago. Talk about this thing of Jim Crow laws, how people were disenfranchised due to vagrancy laws, and that just got taken off the books this past 6 months. In the state of Louisiana. Then we look at the 13th, the 14th, the 15th Amendment. There's so much we have to do, and it's not easy. It becomes overwhelming, but it has to take place for us today, but more so, we got to stand up for our children's children for tomorrow. Because right now, what's going on? We see that President Trump just pulled a power move, signing an executive order for $400 addition for the unemployment until the end of the year, payroll taxes. He kept the protecting people from evictions. Since our Congress couldn't do it, what happened? He pulled a power move.
Hey, you know what? The two bodies arguing, the Senate and they arguing. So he got the executive move. So that made him look good, sign the executive order, so he can. Oh, I'm gonna vote for Trump. He gave me $400, but he owe you more than $400, bro.
Yeah.
He owe you $400 a month, man. I mean a week times 4, $1,600. Your bills way more than that if you living in a certain state or city. The bills are high. So I mean, we got to understand what the play is here. Why did he make this play? You see, because I mean, it's all a systematic game. We just don't know how the game is being played.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. And then, like you say, the guys who run for office and get in office, they say they learning on the job. No, you should have learned before you went and asked for the job. You should have been studying the process before you became congressman, before you became alderman, before you became a city council member. You should be understanding the play, how all the government entities work hand in hand.
Right.
All the government entities work hand in hand from the top to the bottom. It's a puzzle. Now, you lay 1,000 pieces out, fix it. 1,000-piece puzzle. And if you're not a thinker, you can't put this puzzle together. You see? That's what's wrong. The distractions keep us from being able to put the puzzle together.
Sometimes we can't identify. Sometimes we can't identify what a distraction is. We think that's very urgent or it's an emergency, and we have to handle it. But it is really a hidden distraction.
That's what they made this COVID-19. It's a cold-blooded distraction. It closed the world down. We're in the greatest recession that we ever been in. 2000, when Obama came into office, it was called a Great Recession. He put it back together by funding the right situations, funding, cash flow, putting it in the right situation to bring the economy back, creating jobs, highways, the byways. He focusing on those and all the different things, all the different entities. Talking about relieving educational debt. $10,000 behind the 8 ball, $30,000 behind the 8 ball after you get your degree. He created something that after 10 years, if you hadn't paid it off, we're gonna squash it. What government entity getting their money? It's a government entity getting their money. The Fannie Mae, they getting their money. You see what I'm saying? All the different entities. We got to understand who they are. The Federal Reserve is an entity all by itself. Right. But they control the government. They fund the government. They take our tax money or tax dollars and give it back. I told they profit $102 billion 2015 and gave $97.7 billion back to the government. Who kept the other money?
Well, brother, you laid it down. We laid it down together. So much we have to do. We can keep the conversation going for a period of time, but that's our time. And I'll give you the last few words before we get out of here.
Yeah, all I can say, man, KIEZ 106.7. News you can use. Get involved. This stuff is real. We ain't talking about domino, even though everything started with the big six. We talking about what's real and what's not real, So you got to get involved, listen to KIEZ, get focused, and we change our reality overnight. Once you know, information is power, digest, EAT.
All right. That's it. Together, we're the voice of the community. And Brother Marcus,